So, what makes me cranky about Tomb Raider? QuickTime events. At least I'm pretty sure this movie had QuickTime events. I know I was trying to press square a few dozen times during the action sequences. Which is to say, if I hadn't known this was a movie based on a video game series, I probably could have figured it out just by the way the action works. Not only is it shot pretty similar to how you might expect a video game cinematic to look, it doesn't flow very well with the story itself. It just sort of pops in like when you trigger a cutscene in a game, particularly one that includes prompts to hit buttons to avoid damage and or death. I guess in that respect, that makes this version of Tomb Raider one of the most accurate video game adaptations to date, though I can't really speak to how well it translates the rebooted Lara Croft or her story to the big screen, as I haven't played the newer Tomb Raider games on which this is clearly based, so I only know what I've seen from demos and trailers and the like. At the very least, Alicia Vikander bears a solid resemblance to her video game counterpart, and she does end up essentially on her own on a not quite deserted island that holds the tomb of an ancient Japanese queen. Despite the title, she's not actually there to raid the tomb, though. She's just searching for her long-lost father, who got himself wrapped up in a race to stop an evil organization from using the ancient Japanese queen to genocide people who disagree with them, I guess? It's not very clear what they want. I think the whole evil organization stuff is pulled in from the second game, so this makes this kind of a combination of the two plots. But really, it's just your typical series of lazy tropes designed to add some kind of mystery and grand scale to something that frankly would work better if it were just simpler and more personal. And that's where Tomb Raider begins stumbling into the same pitfalls that get the better of most video game movies. It's extraordinarily difficult to translate a story that a player can experience at their leisure over the course of what can be dozens of hours of playtime into a single, coherent, 2-hour-long narrative that somehow still captures the spirit of the property. It usually results in a lot of clunky exposition, significant pacing issues, and scenes that feel forced because the connective tissue that normally held them together was originally in the hands of the player, and now the scriptwriters have to just make something up to tie these things together. As is the case with Tomb Raider, not only is the exposition delivered mostly through lazy flashbacks that actually take away the weight of certain reveals, it's often really redundant. We get the explanation of how the Japanese queen could spread death everywhere with just her touch like 5 times, starting with an opening narration that you get virtually verbatim again later in the movie. In a video game, that kind of repetition makes sense, because it could very well be days since the last time you got that information, but in a movie it's just tedious since it's only been all of 5 minutes since you heard the story the last time. That, of course, messes up the pacing because the movie keeps wasting time repeating itself. The first 20 minutes or so are just as tedious as one of those video game tutorials that has to teach you what each and every button does, when you can figure all of that out in a couple of minutes just fooling around with the controller. Everything we learn about Lara in that time, we will learn again once the story gets going, and usually in more interesting ways. We don't need 3 or 4 scenes devoted to showing her as pretty athletic and capable of fighting when one look at Alicia Vikander's arms will tell you that. It also means we don't have much time to flesh out some of the other characters in the movie, like Walton Goggins' Matthias, who seems like he's going to be a rather sympathetic antagonist, but ends up reduced to being a bad guy who is bad. Even if being bad in that particular moment seems like it runs against his own interests. Because otherwise we can't get more QuickTime events. You see this with the puzzles that need solving too. Lara just has an answer and then does the thing, and we watch her do the thing. We're not really brought along with solving mysteries in a satisfying way like, say, Indiana Jones did or National Treasure did. Mostly because those movies made the puzzle solving as much about the characters as it did about getting to the next place, like Indy having to take a leap of faith to get to the Grail. That's not to say Lara is an inexplicably superpowered uber-genius Mary Sue like we usually see. It's just that the movie doesn't have time for much focus on the problem solving, given it's too busy with flashbacks and tutorials. In fact, Tomb Raider makes the refreshing decision to allow its female action hero to run away, rather than wade into a fight she would most certainly lose if the script wasn't there to bail her out. And if anything, as I said, they spend too much time establishing her bona fides. So yeah, Tomb Raider is definitely a video game movie, and as far as those go, it's a relatively inoffensive one. I'd say unlike its predecessors with Angelina Jolie, but it's kind of difficult to compare them since this one is actually taking the material seriously. The Jolie ones were made back before geek culture became popular, so they're way more tongue-in-cheek, campy affairs. That gives them the advantage of potentially slipping into so bad it's good territory, whereas this version doesn't really have that option. This one is more of your average standalone action movie that happens to have some roots in a video game. So it neither stands out for being really good, or for being utterly ridiculous like the Jolie ones. I think if you got nothing better to do this weekend, catching a matinee of this movie isn't really out of the question. I don't expect it will get the sequel it so desperately tries to set up, but it's not a Yui Bowl disaster or a total misfire like the Assassin's Creed movie last year. That's what I thought about Tomb Raider anyway. Let me know what you thought in the comments below, and every like you leave helps me find my way through the dark cavern that is YouTube. So please hit that like button if you enjoyed the review. And if you'd like to help fund future expeditions out to the theater, go ahead and subscribe to the channel for more reviews.